What's going on, everybody? My name is Sean Johnson. I teach an entrepreneurship class at Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management. I'm also a founding partner at Manifold, which is a venture holding company that invests in startups, advises enterprise organizations on growth, and incubates new businesses. And today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about trust. Our company is actually doing a book club on The Trusted Advisor, which is a book by David Meister, targeted toward professional service firms. So our advisory practice is doing a book club on it, and it was an opportunity for me to go back through the book, and was just a really nice reminder of ways that you can build trust with your customers or with your clients. And so I just wanted to kind of give an overview of some of the things that really stood out to me in that, and how either we've applied it in the past, or I've applied it in the past personally, or how I would like to do a better job of applying it kind of going forward. So the main idea, first of all, of the trusted advisor is that your job is to kind of care about the client. You want to put a higher value on maintaining the relationship than you do on making money in the short term. And the idea is that trust is something that builds over time. It doesn't simply appear. You have to kind of earn that right. It takes a long period of time. It's really easy to lose trust, and so you certainly want to keep it. But one of the best ways to do that is just to optimize for the long term and focus on relationship building and focusing on serving them, not necessarily transacting. And so, how do you do that? And there's a couple of different ways that David calls out that I thought were really important. The first one is this idea of integrity, focusing on doing what he calls the next right thing, right? And so that means a bunch of stuff. It means certainly all the basic blocking and tackling, like show up on time, do what you say you will, say please and thank you, etc. So that means, when you say you're going to show up for a meeting, show up for a meeting, confirm it if you need to beforehand. Whenever you need to renegotiate a commitment that you've previously made, do so as quickly as possible. If you have bad news that you need to tell them, share it with them as quickly as you can. But other things too, tell them the truth, not necessarily what you think they want to hear, right? They are very often getting what they want to hear from their team. Their team maybe is afraid of taking a risk and putting themselves out there. The power dynamics that are often in play with a manager-subordinate type of relationship can sometimes make hearing the truth hard. And so one of your goals is to be that voice for them, to tell them the truth, even if it costs you an engagement, right? If for some reason they get upset by hearing the truth, or if telling the truth is going to harm your ability to close that deal, consider it an investment in a long-term relationship. And David argues that you should act like you're trying to advise your parents. And for me, what I took out of that is, like, I would tell them not what they needed to hear necessarily, but I would tell them what was kind of in their best interests, right? Other things that are important from an integrity perspective, being okay saying that you don't know something. I think a lot of times consultants, because professional services firms are basically monetizing knowledge and monetizing expertise, it can be difficult sometimes, I think, for people, especially younger folks in professional service firms, to acknowledge that they don't know something. And so you want to feel comfortable saying that. You do not have to prove yourself every 10 seconds, right? And so, David uses this example, and I've heard it from Jerry Colonna as well. Like, tell yourself before you go into any meeting, I have a right to be in this room, and I am adding value by being in this room. I don't necessarily have to go out and prove it, right? So that's one. It's like, those are all ways that you can build up your integrity with your client. Another one is making them feel like something is their idea, right? And so the model that David suggests that you use for that is it's almost like Socratic in a way. It's like you're trying to get them to think for themselves. So you ask questions rather than telling them what you think, right? And this is helpful in a lot of ways. It allows you to disagree with them without being disagreeable. Like, having a question-based approach, you're able to slowly kind of guide them toward a certain direction, right? Another is that, a lot of times they're not even necessarily asking for your help, right? Like, sometimes they're anxious or uncertain about something, and maybe they want reassurance, right? They want you to make them feel like the decision that they're making is a good decision, or sometimes they just want kind of a sympathetic ear. Now, obviously, you want to balance that with the integrity point earlier about telling them the truth, but kind of try to pay attention to what they're actually looking for, and sometimes you can even just point blank ask it, like, how do you think I can help you here? Is a great question to ask, right? And sometimes the answer is I'm looking for a concrete solution to the problem. Sometimes it's just I'm looking, I just need someone to bounce this off of, right? Because sometimes, again, people in power especially don't always feel like they can talk to their team or their subordinates about things that maybe they're feeling anxiety or uncertainty about. In terms of a model for kind of getting them to see something as being their idea, the approach that David suggests is lay out the options that you see that are available to them, and then to the degree that you understand what those options are, educate them about each of them. Like, what are the pros and cons? What are the implications? What are the second and third order effects? I think getting good at second and third order thinking is super important because you help them see not just the immediate ramifications, but maybe the long-term ramifications. You can certainly give them your recommendation, like, this is what I would potentially do, but don't push them too hard. They're the client. Ultimately, it's up to them. Your job is to be their consigliere or their advisor, not to make the decisions for them. So you want to make sure that they are ultimately the ones choosing. So making sure that you are making it feel like it's their idea and not kind of strong arming them is another huge thing that I kind of took out of the book. Another one was just building relationships with people. It's a lot like dating, or it's a lot like trying to become a friend. And for some reason we forget these things, right? So, getting in the habit of taking notes during interactions. Harvey Mackay actually wrote a great book called Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty, which is a networking book. Harvey Mackay owned a paper mill or a paper company, but was like one of the most connected guys in business in the United States at the time. This was like in the late 80s, early 90s. But one of the things that he had his salespeople do, and this was pre-CRM, was he created what he called the Mackay 66. And it was like where they went to school, their anniversary, the age of their kids' birthdays, and then do things like, if I'm on an airplane and I'm going to LA, look through my dossier of my accounts. And if somebody went to UCLA or whatever, maybe I stop by real quick and grab a sweatshirt and just ship it off to them and just say, hey, I was thinking of you. I always loved that idea. And so David talks about, at a minimum, like kind of getting the habit of taking notes and reviewing them before you get into your next meeting. It's like basic blocking and tackling stuff. Requires pretty disciplined use of like a CRM. And thankfully there are great CRM tools out there now. But I think a lot of times people think of those in the context of business development or sales conversations, and not necessarily as much in terms of account management or building relationships or becoming a trusted advisor. The other thing that David recommends, and you've probably heard this before, but is this idea of like active listening, and get in the habit of trying to, the most charismatic people that I've ever met are people who make you feel like you're the only person, certainly in the room, but maybe even like the only person in the world. So like, your phone goes away or is turned off or is in your briefcase or whatever it is. You don't necessarily have your computer open because you're looking at Slack. Like, yes, it's easier to take notes on the one hand, but it often can make it look like you're multitasking. Maybe you start bringing a tablet instead, and it's laying on, the conference room table or whatever it is. One, it takes up a smaller footprint, but more importantly, like, they can see that you're writing and taking notes and you're actually listening to the conversation itself rather than paying attention to your email or to a Slack conversation or something else that's kind of going on. And then the other thing is just like practicing active listening. So, mirroring their movements when they say something, kind of not regurgitating it. Like, you don't want to sound like a parrot, but like making sure that you understand what they're saying is a great skill. One, to make sure that you understand what they're saying, but also to build empathy because they understand that you hear them, right? And that's super, super important. So a lot of times I think people assume that that the other person thinks that they hear them, whether or not they actually do. And that can lead to a lot of disagreements at worst, but at best, it's a misalignment, right? It's a missed opportunity to build rapport. So practice putting devices away, only having the notes in front of you, and asking active listening questions is super, super important. So those were the three main things I took away from the Trusted Advisor. Again, just to recap, do things that kind of protect your integrity. That's how you build trust over time. 2, use various strategies and tactics to help them arrive at their own solutions and make it feel like it was their idea rather than you kind of pushing the solution on them. And then number 3, using strategies for kind of building rapport in the relationship and deepening that relationship over time. So again, the book is The Trusted Advisor by David Meister. I think it's a fantastic introduction to how to build solid relationships. I'm looking forward to our conversation with my team in a couple of days here as they go through the book. I'm looking forward to hearing what they have to say or what they took away from it. But hopefully you found this helpful. If so, feel free to subscribe, like the video. That always helps out. But I really appreciate you listening, and thanks for the time.